Hello, and welcome to Split Your Head. I'm your host, Bob, and today's special guest is a return visit from the king of So-Cal Splatter, Stephen Grischuk. With his ambitious company, Box Creep Films, they've been busy pumping out video games, a web series with Jonathan Doe, and most recently, his latest film, Battle Jacket. As a fan of his unique brand of lo-fi, over-the-top cinema, I just had to have him on so we could discuss his many projects and this brand spanking new metalhead horror flick. Steven, how are we doing?
I'm doing great, Bob, especially after an awesome introduction like that. So thank you.
Well, you made the job easy, my friend, because Battle Jacket, I just watched it last night. It was a blast. It made on the promise of all the metal you've been talking about with me over the past couple years, you know? So I mean, the question is, like, what inspired you to do Battle Jacket? But I think it's pretty clear. But tell the world, what inspired you to do Battle Jacket?
I try to be open to so many different things because I think even if you're watching like a kid's show or a TV commercial, there's always a way to be inspired by that or take inspiration from that. So I think a direct line of influence for Battle Jacket would maybe be like Evil Dead, definitely Evil Dead, and being a metal musician, I always wanted to incorporate metal into my films, and I never really had a good way to record music until Battle Jacket came around. Just before Battle Jacket, I started kind of jerry-rigging some equipment together and figured out a way to kind of record. So I was like, cool, finally, I can record some bass tracks and guitars, and so I made it happen. And when I could finally record metal music the way I wanted to, I was like, this can be a great premise for a horror movie.
Okay. So what came first then, the story or the music?
They both kind of seem to fall into place at about the same time. When I learned to record, I was like, well, awesome. Now I can finally use these backing tracks and stuff in my films. And I was like, what a better way to introduce my metal chops with a horror film. So I just kind of combined the two things together. And lo and behold, we have this beautiful little So-Cal Splatter marriage here.
Yeah, I love that term, by the way. So-Cal Splatter. Yeah, you need to get like merch made with that. That is so good. So the band in the film then aren't actually musicians?
Yeah. So funny enough, all three of the dudes in the band are actually all musicians.
Okay.
They all have, like for example, Ian Olsen, the guy who plays the lead in the film. Ian Olsen's in like a punk band called Butt Candy.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
Butt Candy is kind of like a green Jello style band where they all dress up in really over the top costumes. And for example, he plays actually the drums. He plays guitar in Battle Jacket. But in Butt Candy, he's a drummer. And he dresses up as like a robot, and he's got a huge robot head. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah. And then they're the bass player in the band. He actually is in a band with Shane Kepler, the drummer in the band, where they both do play drums and bass respectively. They're in a band called Great Electric Quest, which is kind of like an old school heavy metal kind of Judas Priest-esque kind of band.
Oh, okay. Right on. It felt in the movie like they had this really kind of like adorable rapport, which I wonder is that a nod to how they actually play in a band together in real life or something?
Absolutely. When I wrote the screenplay and drew up the storyboard, I always kind of visualized somebody first in my life who maybe would want to play the role. It just helps me to kind of flesh it out. And I went, if these two characters have a really good rapport, it would really help if they were kind of acquaintances beforehand. And so what you see on screen is basically how they are in real life in their band. So it was a perfect marriage there.
Oh, okay. But they're not married, though, now.
No.
No, okay.
Well, Shane is married, but not to Jerry. No, Shane is married to Crystal, obviously. But yeah.
Okay.
But they're good dudes. They've been friends for a long time, and I've known them both for a very long time now, especially Shane. Shane and I go way back. We've been friends forever.
Yeah, I think because I saw, is his sister also in the film? Or did I totally misunderstand it? Okay.
Yep. Rachel is his sister. Shane and Rachel, I've known them for an eternity, basically, since I was a little kid. We actually, believe it or not, live on the same street. So when I want to
Hmm.
shoot something, I just call them up and I'm like, "You guys want to come down tomorrow?" They're like, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah, it seemed like this was kind of like a big family affair because the film revolves around like different family relations and everything. And like your dad plays a character who I don't necessarily want to spoil the situation with him, but I found that this film did speak a lot to family relations in a weird way. Was that something that you were conscious of, that you're like, I want to insert into this film? Is that what was going on there?
I don't really have a problem kind of genre bending, so to speak, kind of
Sure.
squishing things together that maybe you wouldn't typically think of, especially on like a tiny budget. I think that's part of what makes Box Creek films a little different than other micro budget productions. And people really appreciate that. I noticed that a lot when I first tried Vapor Green. A lot of people reached out and said, Vapor Green's pretty cool premise, and I like that there's different elements in here. And so I like films of all different kinds of genres. So I figured why not squeeze as many as I can into everything that I do.
Hmm.
And as long as it fits the
Yeah.
story and I can make it all work without it being too outlandish, I'll squeeze as many cool things in there as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting and kind of felt really different compared to your other films, and that you deal a lot with like grief and mental health as well. So when you combine that with, all these different family relations, it kind of brings me back to like some of the darker kind of 80s horror films. Like if you think of like Nightmare on Elm Street 3, for instance, where it's like all these parents are sending their kids off to a mental institute or something, to deal with their nightmares. And yeah, it just seemed like a really different kind of avenue for you to go into. Like, what kind of pushed you to try something a little bit darker?
Kind of piggybacking on that idea, at the premiere, it's fun because we had a premiere of 45 people come to see the film, which was great.
Nice. Yeah.
And but it's mostly friends and family and people who are friends with actors and things like that. And it's all the gore effects and everything were met to great response. But all of the scenes that are a little bit more emotionally heavy duty actually got very the room got very quiet on those scenes, which I think was a really good sign because I think it
Hmm.
was very telling that when I was trying to pull on your heartstrings, it actually did work a little bit.
But I mean, it seems like the first time maybe you've dealt with something a little bit heavier like that, which is kind of hard to pull off with such ridiculous effects and everything. Was there any kind of films that maybe you feel kind of did that you were kind of like paying homage to, or that kind of inspired you with that?
You know what makes me think of that is there's a movie I may have mentioned on your show previously. My mind immediately goes to Gorotica, the Hugh
Oh, I
Gallagher
don't know
movie.
that one.
Yeah, it's a shot on video movie by Hugh Gallagher,
Mm.
and it's a cheesy shot on video movie, but it's actually a pretty dark, heavy duty little story. And that film is a huge inspiration on me, generally speaking.
Mm.
Um, Definitely recommend Gorotica if you guys haven't seen that.
Yeah, I'm down. Yeah. It actually made me think of, do you know Tim Ritter?
I know of Tim Ritter, and I think I've seen one or
Oh,
two of his films, but I can't think of any off the top of my head.
well, he's most well known for Truth or Dare: A Critical Madness, which is has been famously repped by Elijah Wood. I actually just did an interview with Susanna Capostasi, who is also an SOV director, and she did The Masculator that Tim Ritter was in, and they're actually like a relationship. Um, yeah. Anyways, yeah. His films are kind of like this interesting mix of like the SOV with a bit of like camp and over the top, but such a kind of heaviness and darkness that
Hmm.
it does feel like, how is this working? But it does, in a way. Like you kind of feel like you have permission to laugh sometimes, but then it still does like pull on your heartstrings, and it's a really hard mix to pull off, which I think you definitely did this time. So
Thank you. Yeah, I
yeah.
appreciate that. I think a big part of that that really sucked the audience in and got them emotionally invested in the film as they did,
Mm,
what came down to performance. I think it came down a lot to the actor's performance, especially between Rachel Kepler and Ian Olsen, who played the lead there.
mm,
I think those two were really pretty exceptional actors, honestly, and I'm lucky to have them both as friends. So I think
yeah.
huge kudos to them.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, a lot of what kind of resonated with me was that like it reminded me of my own experiences dealing with grief. And I mean, there was points when I was like, after my father died, I had trouble sleeping and was like getting prescribed different things, and it kind of brought me back to that place a little bit, especially with Ian Olsen's character. You kind of see almost like that, like he looks like cortisol is just like swimming through his body, like he looks so stressed out. So yeah, I mean, feel free to just be like, I don't feel comfortable going into this, but have you had experiences like that? Like, did this film kind of feed off of that?
Well, I appreciate you kind of opening up about your experience there. If you want to know a very, very spooky parallel between real life and the film,
Mm.
I knew Ian Olsen just a very, very little, very, very casually before we started shooting this movie. And I got to know him
Yeah.
very well throughout the course of production. And this is more his story to tell than mine. So I'm going to
Okay.
paraphrase this a little bit, but I think it's important to
Sure.
say when I wrote Battle Jacket with the idea that Ian was going to play the lead part of a guitarist who loses his best friend, who's the singer in the band. And apparently, um, like 10, 12 years ago, something like that, his best friend was the vocalist of his band that he played guitar in, and he ended up passing away.
Oh wow.
So when I wrote the script and gave it to Ian, I went, "Can you read this over and let me know?" He came back to me a week later and he was like, "I would love to do this movie because this is my story 100%."
Well,
And I couldn't
not
believe it.
100%, right? I mean,
Oh, pretty darn close.
just like, whoa.
Whoa. Yeah.
Sorry,
And
not
no,
not
it's
to be
true.
disrespectful, but like,
No, you're not. You're not. Trust me.
okay, okay,
Yeah, but pretty close. As
okay,
far
yeah,
as
yeah.
the dramatic elements of the story are
Sure,
absolutely
sure.
are absolutely parallel with his life,
Yeah, yeah,
which is
yeah,
pretty amazing. And like what he has gone through and what he's playing in his character are very similar, and his relationships
yeah,
with people are similar. So it's a very bizarre. The more we progressed into production of Battle Jacket, the more we realized this is getting really spooky. Even up until the
mm.
point of the movie premiere, it turns out the drummer in that same band also passed away.
Oh
And the
wow,
anniversary of his death was on the date that we had the premiere, and that was a total fluke as well.
wow.
So I don't know what to tell you, but it's pretty interesting, to
Okay,
say the least. Yeah,
yeah. It's interesting to me too because like you wrote the film before meeting Ian Olsen, is that correct?
we had met maybe twice very casually, and I had heard he was an
Okay.
actor. He was a fan of what I was doing with Box Creek Films, and he
Oh,
was like, "Oh,
cool.
if you ever want to do something, put me in it." And I said, "Sure."
Yeah. But you didn't know about his life story or any of those kind of details.
At that
So,
point, I hardly knew his last name. I didn't know almost anything about him. We met very
right.
casually at a movie night one time. Uh,
Okay. Yeah, it seems almost like this psychic conjuring in a way of like you creating this actor. And I feel like I'm getting an idea for a film from that. Do you know what I mean? Like the
sure,
idea of like I wrote this person and they were created and they became a part of my life, and then you just go from there
totally. Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, you could take that idea and run with it, and you could do a million different storylines based off of that for sure.
No, no, no. I don't write films. I just give people ideas for films on podcasts. That's all I can do. That's all I'm good for.
You're very
Um,
you're very insightful, and you do ask a lot of really good questions. That's why part of the reason
well,
why I love
thank
Split
you.
Your Head. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're good at
thank
what
you. I
you do. So
appreciate that. No, though I think I was kind of like tapping into that though because the film reminded me of another. It's actually not shot on video, but it's like similarly kind of like low budget. Do you know Beyond the Dream's Door?
no, but I've heard of the film, but I've never seen it.
Oh, you have to see that. I think you'd love it because I think it does a similar thing in terms of how this film Battle Jacket introduces the supernatural elements, and
Mm.
I mean, let me know if I'm kind of spoiling anything, but just the
No,
way
not at all.
the film kind of goes off the rails towards the end is very similar to what happens in Beyond the Dream Store, of sort of just like the ending. Is the ending of Battle Jacket, is it even reality at that point? You know what I mean? Like it just totally transcends that. And I love that type of thing.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. The end 15 minutes or so of the film was really important. There's a couple little bloody bits throughout. Um,
Hmm.
but the last 15 minutes to me was really quite important. I spent a lot of time storyboarding that bit and writing that out and building effects just for those last 10 or 15 minutes, because to make that really over the top and everything was going to be the big payoff that the story was building up to.
Mm,
So those last 15 minutes to feel kind of dreamlike, otherworldly, um, like we just Lucio Fulci style opened up the gates of hell, so to speak.
right.
So that was really important for me, and it killed at the premiere. So I'm excited for more people to see the
Yeah.
last few scenes there, because they're pretty fun in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I would have loved to see that on a big screen. And I'm looking forward to picking up a copy of this at some point. Okay, and again, let me know if I'm spoiling. The inspiration for the end creature, if you will. What kind of, like, where did you get that? Because I've never seen anything like that before. The only other thing I can think of is a dragon fruit.
Oh wow, yeah, interesting
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. Um, I knew I needed a monster, and I started sculpting one, and I looked at it and I went, "This is horrible," and I took the whole thing apart, and I immediately started rebuilding something, and
Yeah.
it was the faster sculpts I ever did. I can't tell you exactly where it came from. I
Hmm.
had a whole bunch of goopy egg sac style kind of things in its mouth, and I was like, this thing could carry its children in its mouth. And I don't know, you when you start to build a monster, you kind of start to think like practically, how do these pieces work? Because you can just glue a bunch of tentacles to an eyeball and go, it's a monster. But if you want to get inside the head of the
So
monster, yeah. Very appropriate timing. Yeah.
I know. I was like, what?
But
Anyway, sorry. Go on. Go on.
no, no, it's cool. Excellent work, by the way. Looks great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I like that style. Um,
Hmm.
as you find when you build a monster, you kind of start getting into the head of it a little bit, and you start to or you try to understand or justify why these parts are on this thing, and
Mm.
you kind of go, well, how does it see? How does it talk? How does it, or making monster sounds? How does this thing function? And you kind of start
Yeah.
doing that. At least I do, as I'm sculpting and things like that. And he came together very quick. I call all my monsters have names, and they don't have any relation to anything. For whatever reason, we called him Paco the Destroyer.
That's great.
So, so
Paco. Okay. Okay.
beats me, man. Paco lives in the
Yeah.
garage now, and
Okay.
he's just a part of the collection. He's right up there with the
Right. Right.
bullets and the rubber chickens. We got trunks full of
Yeah.
really weird stuff in the garage, but um, he came together very
Yeah.
quick. He was actually one of my fastest sculpts, and I thought one of my coolest looking monsters.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I would definitely agree. Your coolest looking monster. So,
Thank you.
just so I have this correct, you said that you started creating the creature and then you just scrapped it all and then restarted. Is that right?
Yeah, I had done like a rough sculpt because I try to get in just a few hours, maybe. Well, it depends on the sculpt and what I'm doing, but for something like that,
Yeah.
maybe 8 hours or something of sculpt time total. And
Okay.
I had just started for like 30 minutes, and I put a bunch of crap together, and I went, this looks so terrible. So I scrapped the whole thing and immediately restarted, and I was like, I need a new shape, just something else completely. And as soon as I started doing
Oh,
that, it
okay.
all came together in a matter of probably 3 hours. He was done.
Okay. Because at first I thought you were going to say that you built the whole sculpture and then you basically like ripped off the face and then it revealed. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Almost like you're peeling a layer. And then Could you imagine? I mean, that would be so cool, but I guess that is like a dragon fruit at that point.
Actually, it's kind of funny you say that. There is a kind of a dream like, I don't want to say like a dream sequence, that sounds so cliche, because Battle Jacket doesn't really have traditional kind of dream like sequences, but there are a couple little moments where the lead character is kind of looking into a different universe, so to speak, right? And in one of those scenes, there was a monster that I just did not like at all, and I was going to squish the clay and remake him. And when I squished him, the shape looked perfect.
Oh,
So
okay,
it's
cool.
funny you say that. So I did kind of end up squishing a monster and running with that
right.
look, which was
Yeah,
very
yeah.
Peter Jackson and Bad Taste. I don't know if you know, familiar with Bad Taste.
Oh my God, yes, of course.
How can you
fucking
not?
love those movies. Yeah.
So good. Like, you know, the
Yeah.
shape of the aliens in that, right, with their squished head. I don't know if you'd ever heard that story, but the reason why their heads are
No.
squished is because everyone thought it was by design, but Peter Jackson just squished the heads down so they'd fit into the oven.
Oh, okay.
So he just built them too tall and they wouldn't fit inside of his mom's oven, so he just squished the head down and shoved it in, and now made that iconic look.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah, it's sort of like a happy accident at that point.
Totally, yeah. I Bob Ross like all my monsters, like they're happy accidents everywhere. You
know? So you were saying then that the film doesn't really have like traditional dream sequences. So what were those sort of like? There are these little kind of like deviations from the narrative, which I kind of took it as, you know, Ian Olsen's character is sort of like, you know, if you're having trouble sleeping, right, it gets to the point where your waking life and your sleeping life are kind of like blurred a little bit. So I kind of took it as that, but is that not what the intention was, or what's the intention?
No, you pretty much nailed it. Yeah, I wanted it to kind of have him pop in and out of like his reality, so to speak. Like he's just teetering on sanity the whole time.
Right. Okay.
And he's desperately trying to keep his relationship and the band and everything on track, but at the same time, he's having a hard time keeping it all straight.
Yeah. And then it just goes off the rails. I mean, is this your most nihilistic ending? I mean, I guess we can't even really talk about it if we're going to spoil it then. So.
We can a little bit.
Yeah.
It's hard to say if it's the most. I think most of my endings are a little bit of a downer.
Sure.
I think, in Color Space Blood Red, everybody dies. Paper Green, everybody dies. Black Art Collectors Club, everybody dies.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I guess it's because this one has the most like realistic emotional content, for lack of a better descriptive term. You know, just as I was saying earlier, like, oh, this reminds me of, you know, experiences of my life. Whereas I've never had experiences like, you know, what's happened in your other films. So that's what made the ending even more of a downer, because you're like, oh, this isn't going to work out.
Yeah, I think that's I think all my films have a fair amount, I think, of comedy and horror elements in there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I think the humor in Battle Jacket works better than most of my films. I think the jokes are a little bit more punchy and stuff like that, at least in my opinion. But
yeah.
But I also do think that the heavy-duty, more emotional scenes and the ending are a little bit heavier, a little bit darker than maybe what I've previously done. I could totally see that.
So do you think for your next film, then, are you going to go even further in that direction? Are we going to get like full-on misery porn from Stephen Grischuk, the So-Cal Splatter King?
King is being pretty generous.
I say it is so.
I'd be okay with like So-Cal Splatter Guy, like.
Okay.
But thank you.
Okay.
As far as misery porn, you know, I've got a couple ideas that are pretty bleak, and I wonder if I went there without kind of progressing that way, if people would think I was just trying to piggyback on some other kind of fad in the underground cinema world, because it definitely seems like there's a lot of people going, we'll make this as black and as bleak as possible,
Right.
and it'll all be shot very monochromatically and like all this stuff, and I'm going, I'm not really that guy. I'm kind of a silly dude, and that's not to say I can come up with really dark, heavy duty stuff. I can, but I think if I were to jump from what I've done into something like that, I think people would just write me off as trying to piggyback on something, which is wrong because I have definitely darker ideas. But I think if I use my films as like stepping stones to kind of progress into that point, maybe I'll do that. But then who knows, if I write something that's really hilarious and goofy all the way through, and there's just tons of gore and splatter and all this fun stuff, I mean, I'll probably do that first. I'll put out whatever I feel like is the most feasibly thought out project.
Right.
I won't go, this next thing has to be darker or this thing has to be funnier. I'll just go, no, this feels like the appropriate time to release this project. It's at a stage where it's fully fleshed out. The story makes sense. There's no cutting corners to try to fill in certain things. And that's kind of what I'll do first. I try to flesh out everything completely first, and then we start production.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. When you're talking about it, though, like how if you kind of jump into that, you're kind of piggybacking on, other fads in underground horror. It did start to make me think that maybe then you'd be going closer to your friend Jonathan Doe's work, like if you're going in that direction. And I have this in my notes as an idea I'd love to pitch, is the idea of a Putrid Productions and Box Creep Films collaborative anthology horror film. So you both do like either one episode each, or you both do two or something, because I think that would maybe be the format to see these worlds collide in a way.
That could be pretty fun. It's not a bad idea. Yeah. We've discussed it before. I don't know. It's hard to say. I'll never say never. We'll never say never, The last collab we did was Screen Time, which was a total blast because all John and I do when we hang out is watch scary movies and talk about horror movies. So I was like, why don't we just do this on a set and we'll make a TV show out of it? And has its fun kind of Elvira and Svengoolie kind of moments on it. And it was a good time. And I also collabed on one of his short films. I did effects for one of his shorts that ended up suffering, which was interesting to shoot. I've never shot anything that dark before.
I remember that one. That was a pretty shocking entry from, not really shocking for Jonathan Doe, but definitely shocking for anything I've seen you do, for sure. So in terms of Scream Time, are you guys hoping to do a second season?
Scream Time season 1 is done, and as for now, we're probably just going to have a season 1.
Okay.
We've discussed doing a season 2, but we'll have to see. There's nothing written in stone yet. But as of now, season 1 is just where it's going to be for now.
Okay. Well, I feel like there's so much territory for you guys to mine, though, like you guys touched on a lot of classics, but I'm sure so many people contacted you afterwards, saying, would love to hear you talk about this film, that genre, that era, whatever. So I hope you guys, consider it. But I totally understand because, I just had Jonathan and Regan on recently, and they're just like so crazy busy. I'm just wondering, you guys out in California, like, do you ever sleep? Like, what's going on?
It's funny you say that. I've had such difficulty sleeping lately because I lay down to go to sleep, and very much like the dream-like sequences in Battle Jacket, my mind is just like going a million miles a minute, and it's just images and pictures and sounds. And it's like every time I close my eyes, I'm just reliving like 1,000 lives, and I can't seem to get any sleep. So,
okay.
So long story short, no.
Okay.
we don't sleep here in California. We just keep going, I guess.
You just keep making art. Yeah.
but it's cool. John and I having us so close together and stuff. I think it
Mm-hmm.
inspires me to want to push and progress and outdo some of his stuff in certain aspects. And I think he does the same with me. We definitely kind of feed off each other, I think, in a very healthy way.
Mm. Okay. Have you seen any of the new erotic grotesque nonsense entry that he's been working on?
I've seen a little bit.
Okay. What did you think?
We were there, I think, the first time we found some of their shooting locations. We were out on a hike,
Oh, cool. Okay.
and we found some of those shooting locations, and he and Reagan started talking about it and brainstorming, and I'm like, this is going to be a movie before you know it. And the next weekend, they went out and started shooting. So,
Oh,
um,
perfect. Yeah.
yeah, so it's cool. I think people who are into that kind of stuff will eat it up. It's right up the same kind of alley, but he's always pushing it. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see where he's
Yeah.
going to go.
I just love the words "eat it up" in regards to that. But I mean, your work has never really gone that route. I feel like everything you've done is kind of more like sort of like more like classic horror in a way of like trying to like shock people, but more in the fun house, a theme park ride sort of way. I think we've talked about this
Mhm.
before, like how you're
Yeah,
indebted to like the Roger Cormans and everything.
exactly. Yeah, that stuff always just gripped me way more. I appreciate what a lot of those guys are doing, but I have no interest in filming a bunch of people puking on each other and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't personally get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And
Hmm.
when I look back on my favorite movies, or even a large part of your audience's favorite films, if they
Yeah.
look back, they're probably going to say things like, well, The Thing, Evil Dead, things that have all these over the top gore scenes and effects and storylines that are kind of more easy to understand and less abstract. And that's just kind of the stuff that's gripped with me a little bit more.
Mm. Yeah, I get that. I get that. Which makes me think, did you see The Substance?
Oh, yeah. The Substance was
Oh, yeah.
Substance was amazing. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
actually been really uh, fascinated by the level of violence that I've seen in the movie theaters lately.
totally. Yeah. What else in terms of like new films that have kind of shocked you? What else is there?
I was really surprised to see something like The Substance get a wide release and be so well received in the cinema, which I thought was awesome because I
Yeah,
really thought it was exceptional. And I
totally.
also saw Terrifier 3,
Oh,
which,
yeah. Love that.
yeah, and it's funny because I hear um, a lot of underground independent horror movie guys go, "Oh, that movie wasn't extreme," and then I go, "I don't know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, you probably herald something that you consider extreme, and it doesn't push boundaries as much as that did."
Yeah. I found the whole maybe like last act of that film like the first time I was actually really scared by a Terrifier film. You know what I'm talking about? Everything that happens in the living room. I
Hmm.
think there's something to do with a cage on the mom's head.
Okay, or like
Yeah.
the
Do you remember?
ring and everything. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. All that stuff really scared me. It was the first time I actually felt like terrified of Terrifier. Because usually it's shocking, but it doesn't really scare me per se. And there was something really dread filled about that, you know?
yeah, and I think when people approach it and go, "Well, I've seen more gnarly movies than that," and I'm like, "Well, I'm sure you have, but that shouldn't be the point of making a good film." At least
No.
I don't think so. Like, if you make an extreme film, that's great. That's great. It's just extra
Yeah.
points for making a good film. It doesn't necessarily have to be extreme for extreme's sake. Really, I feel that way with music too. Like a lot of like extreme metal music and
Mm.
stuff. It's like people go, "I just want
Oh,
to make the gnarliest sound ever," and it's like, well, don't you want to
yeah.
make the song ever that's also really gnarly? Like, I don't know.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I kind of want the best of both worlds, like who's the most brutal but writing the best riffs or something like that. Yeah, which makes me think, because I wanted to ask you like what are your top 5 favorite metal albums?
Oh God, top five favorite albums?
Yeah.
Oi, oi, oi. Um, Top 5 favorite metal albums. I mean, I'm a huge Megadeth fan, so there's a couple Megadeth albums
Okay.
I would probably put in there. I would probably put
Okay.
Peace Sells or maybe Rust in Peace I would put
Okay.
on there. Um, I thought, honestly, I'll give you some stuff I've been listening to lately. The
Great.
Last Dying Fetus album, I think, is exceptional.
Mm,
I think it might be their best record. Personally, works for me.
nice.
I really like the last Suffocation album. It was really quite
Oh, it
good
was good. Yeah,
with the
it's
new
really good.
vocalist. Really, really great
Yeah.
stuff. Oh gosh, but as far as like best of all time,
I'm totally putting you on the spot. So
yeah,
I
no, it's
apologize.
fun. It's fun. I can do this all day.
Yeah.
Um, I think Havoc has a lot of really great albums, like a more modern day
Okay.
thrash band.
Hmm.
Havoc's got some really good stuff. Um, there's a couple Cannibal Corpse albums that are just top notch,
Oh,
absolutely the best. Yeah,
yeah.
and
Do
a
you
lot of
have
people.
a Sorry, do you have a favorite Cannibal Corpse album? Like number one of theirs?
It's hard to say, and a lot of people like to say, "Oh, are you a Chris Barnes guy or are you a Corpse Grinder guy?" You know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I like them both. I like them
Sure.
both.
Same,
Um,
same.
yeah, it's hard to say. I think
Hmm.
if you're going for like pure sadism, Barnes is probably the guy because
Yeah.
his lyrics were. It doesn't get any darker than that, frankly. You
No.
know,
No.
it doesn't.
Yeah.
Um, but I like Corpse Grinder's vocal delivery quite a
Yeah.
bit.
It's
So
unbeatable.
yeah, it's really, really a great scream. And
Hmm.
honestly, his kind of hardcore influenced death metal album that he did, the Corpse Grinder album,
Hmm.
I've been listening to quite a bit too. It's actually pretty good.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard that. I should check it out.
Yeah, it's really good. If you're going back kind of old school, like Iron Maiden's Peace of Mind is an amazing record. Really
Hmm.
like that a lot.
Hmm.
And if I were to go with new guys, I mean, the newer guys, I think of like maybe Havoc. I listen to like a lot of thrash and stuff. But if you're also
Yeah.
going like doom metal, like Sleep's Holy Mountain and stuff like that,
Oh,
is
okay.
just so
I
awesome.
love Dope Smoker personally. Dope Smoker is incredible. I
So
can't think of
good.
another hour-long song that is that good.
So good, yeah.
Yeah,
And by
yeah,
that token too, like High on Fire's got a lot of really great records I really love.
yeah,
They did a
yeah.
record
They're really good.
Divermus Mysterious. I really love that one.
I
Uh,
enjoyed the last album they put out.
really good.
Surprisingly, yeah, yeah. It was really fun.
Nobody writes
Yeah.
riffs like Matt Pike does.
No, no. Did you ever listen to though the band that what do they call? I think they're called Ohm, and it's the bassist and drummer.
Really great.
Yeah.
Super hypnotic, like really heavy. Yeah, really great stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, I haven't listened to them in a long time, but I remember kind of stumbling on them maybe in like the mid 2000s or something and just being blown away. Yeah.
Yeah, really good. See, being here from Southern California, we've got like a big like desert rock kind of doomy metal scene.
Oh, yeah.
And so we got a
Okay.
lot of stuff like we have Caius from out here, um,
Hmm.
stuff like that. Like Blues for the Red Sun is a great album. And
That's the band basically before Queens of the Stone Age, right?
yes, yeah, that was the band that
Okay.
was put together before them.
Okay. Gotcha. So, with Battle Jacket being your metal film, have you had a chance to show it to a lot of metalheads or, like, are you going to play it at metal shows even?
We've discussed that. We've discussed that. I've got some friends who shoot music videos and things for all the bands around here, and they've discussed having showings at different bars and things during shows, either before or after the set. And I'm totally open to that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm all about that. I want to see that more of like bands in kind of short films or like 45-minute long films playing together. Because I feel like that is an interesting way to get people kind of excited about either
Hmm.
or. Especially too if a band's gonna play after. They can watch the movie and feel that anticipation. Do you know what I mean? Of just like, oh, cool! Like this is getting me so hyped for the band.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And I think
Mm,
I'd also wouldn't be opposed to just shooting stuff that actually, just like in Battle Jacket, projections and things that went behind bands and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, silly gore compilations from my films and stuff like that. I think it would be a blast
Okay.
to set behind some metal music. It'd be super fun.
Well, that projection part was actually really trippy. It kind of surprised me because I know that you're like I don't want to say you're straight edge, but you don't dabble in any kind of substances or anything. So I was a little surprised to see you kind of dabble in something that would be so effective for someone on substances.
Oh, that's cool. Actually, immediately after
Yeah.
the movie premiered, somebody was like, "Now I got to see it on shrooms."
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah. It feels
Yeah,
like that. Like it feels like trippy, like an acid trip kind of thing. So, like,
sure.
what kind of inspired you to do that, other than maybe 2001: Space Odyssey or something?
There's, yeah, Kubrick's amazing. Kubrick's
Yeah.
great. Um, but it's true that those kind of visuals lend themselves to a really fun viewing experience, at least from a filmmaker's perspective. Like, I like films that tap into that whole kind of trippy atmosphere. Like I just watched Requiem for a Dream
Oh
recently,
yeah, yeah.
and
Mm.
that's not like the like trippiest visual film, but there are some parts that are a little bit, and I'm like, this is pretty fun. So maybe that unintentionally had some kind of influence there. But I wanted to just squeeze as many gags and gimmicks as I could into my film, and I was like, well, I do some animating too, so I just threw some animations in there that I had done as well. And that's the whole reason for the projector thing.
Okay. Yeah, no, I remember like the thing standing out about Requiem for a Dream is all those shots where like the camera I think is attached to someone's head.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm talking about? And so when they're
Yeah,
running around, it's like perfectly kind of lined up. Oh, I love that. You should do that in your next movie, Steven.
it's a great
Can
idea.
you?
I've
Yeah.
seen other people do that, and I'm like, that is such a cool shot.
Yeah.
It's
It's
really
so
cool.
effective.
You can't escape the horror if you're just right there. You know.
Right, right. Yeah. And it would be perfect for like a possession scene or any kind of like siege kind of moment or something, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't I feel like every time I interview, I'm just trying to think of like ideas of like what can you do next? What can you
No, I appreciate it. I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
get the idea that you do enjoy my work, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course, man, of course.
Thanks. Yeah.
Um so the one thing that you've made that I don't know if I'll ever get around to engaging with is the video games.
Yeah.
Cuz
Yeah. We
I
did.
don't know how to play video games.
Okay. Well.
What no, is it a it's like they're computer games though, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah. So we put out a trilogy of 3 video games based on not Battle Jacket, but the last previous 3 films. The trilogy of
Right,
colors,
right.
right? And
Right.
so there's Color Space Blood Red, the game, the Vapor Green RPG game, and then there's the Blackheart Collectors Club Hack and Slash, which is like a slide scroller beat 'em up kind of style game.
Sweet.
That was a project my brother and I worked on. He does coding. He kind of taught himself how to do some coding stuff, and I'm always
Mm.
doing little animations and stuff. And I went, if I gave you a whole bunch of animations, I went, can you program them and make them do something? And he goes, I think I can. So I was like, well, let's
Yeah.
give it a shot. And that was a long time, 5 or 6 months probably of like just intense work. And every time there was a little bug, we'd have to dig in and fix them. And we play tested them for hours and hours and hours.
Oh
So
wow.
no one's got more time invested in those games than I do, because I've definitely grinded the shit out
Right.
of those games. But
Oh
it was a
wow.
lot of fun, and they have not done very well. Nobody wants them.
Oh no, I'm
I,
sorry.
I think the only reason why is a lot of people are very intrigued by them, and they're fascinated, and they go, there's no way this no budget filmmaker guy made 3 video games with original music and gameplay and everything. And I think the only
Yeah.
deterrent really is that they all come on a disc, and nobody has disc drives anymore.
Yeah, it's true. Because well, the other thing I was going to ask you, like, are they just for PC or Mac or both?
Yeah, if you have a disc drive, they'll play.
Oh, on a Mac as well.
I believe so. I haven't had any issues with people playing them on Macs, so they should work.
Okay.
But
Well,
I will say at some point, and hopefully this year, I'm hoping to have them available at boxcreepfilms.com with like a download link, where for a small
done.
price you'll be able to download the files and anybody can get them.
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea. And then if people want to like buy the disc just to have kind of like for their collection, they can get it when they purchase like a movie or something, you know. I could see
Totally.
myself doing that. And I used to play video games a lot when I was a kid. And then, moving like when I moved out to Toronto, I had to like sell my Wii. I had no money. I just kind of like never touched them ever again. But I could see myself really enjoying playing your games. It seems like they would bring me back to that nostalgia a little bit.
Yeah, my I've heard people say that my films have this like childlike innocence about them almost. This quality that
Hmm.
kind of brings them back to their childhood. And I think that comes from a lot of my friends just running around. Like it has this kind of lively magic about it where we all do just feel like friends spraying each other with blood. And
Yeah.
I think the video games are a perfect way to tap into that.
Hmm. Um, what video games then kind of influenced you to do these? Like, what or would you say like you could compare them to?
Color Space Blood Red was kind of modeled after an old Microsoft game called Ski Free. I don't know if you ever played Ski Free.
Never heard of
It's like
it.
a it's like a cursor game. Your cursor becomes this little skier, and he goes down the mountain, and he's being chased by a yeti. It's a pretty pretty
Okay.
hilarious little game. And I played that
Yeah.
for hours when I was a little guy. And then
Nice.
the Vapor Green game is a role playing game. So you rob brains from the cemetery, turn them into drugs, sell them to people on the street, and get into all sorts
Mm.
of trouble. And that was modeled after a game called Stick RPG, which was a game I used to play on Newgrounds when I was a kid.
Newgrounds. Wait, Newgrounds. That sounds so familiar. That
Yeah,
was like they did the like Teletubbies parody.
probably. Yeah, Newgrounds was kind of like a YouTube thing, but it was mixed media. So
Right.
anybody could upload it, and it was video games, music, um, short films, claymations, everything all squished together.
Kind of like on an edgy sort of like South Park kind of vibe though.
Totally, yeah,
Yeah.
really
Like a lot of
skeezy.
parodies.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, a lot of lowbrow humor. But
Okay.
I guess I grew up there when I was a kid. I spent a lot of time on there playing inappropriate games and stuff.
Same.
Yeah. And then the Black Heart Collectors Club Hack and Slash was modeled after an arcade game that was called I'm blanking on the name, Splatterhouse.
Splatterhouse. Oh, that sounds
Splatterhouse,
cool.
where you kind of play as
Okay.
like a Jason Voorhees kind of character, and you just beat up bad guys.
Oh, okay. Huh. I mean, they all sound pretty fun, actually. Yeah. It's a shame that no one has disc drives anymore.
Yeah, a handful of people have played the games, and they really like them. And so I wish more
Yeah.
people would get their hands on them because they were a fun. They're a fun little project, and they all have original music. They feature music from the movies as well as original music and stuff like that. And they were all built from the ground up.
Are they kind of like the sort of games where it takes a long time to beat them, or would you say you could kind of do it in an afternoon?
So each game has such a different play style, and that was kind of
Okay.
important to me. So that like if maybe you didn't like one or even two of the games, maybe one of them would resonate a little bit. And the
Mm.
first game and the second and the last game can be beaten in about 10 minutes or so, each one on their own.
Oh,
So
okay.
maybe 20 minutes there, but the game in the middle is a role playing game, and there's a lot of different avenues you can explore and do. So you can honestly play that one for hours and hours.
Okay, so that's kind of nice. Like, because I don't know if you'd want like every game to be everlasting per se.
No, no.
I was always really bad at beating games. I think I've only beaten like two games in my entire life.
Well, if you like the aspect of I get to go here and sell this or buy this or build that up, then you'll enjoy the Vapor Green game because you go as long as you can without getting caught by police. After the police catch you, there are ways to kind of get out of the police's way and stuff like that too.
Okay. Almost like GTA or something.
Very much like that, actually. Yeah,
Okay, huh. Do you see yourself maybe doing more video games in the future?
my brother and I have discussed doing that for sure, and we
Yeah.
would love to. The only problem was it was a giant time suck. I
Oh
spent
yeah.
hours and hours, like 2 a.m, just animating and clicking things. And I wake up the next day and I've fallen asleep on the keyboard and
Oh
edited
man.
things all funky. I'm like, oh no, I got to do this again. So I would love to, but it's probably not going to happen for a few years. But a story is being written for a new game as we speak. But it's not going to
Yeah.
come out for quite a while. I don't want to tell people, yeah, we're working on a new game. And then people go, well, where is it? It's been 2 years. So
Right. Fair
it
enough.
could be a while before we get there.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, like, maybe for your next game, then having a completely standalone story might be a way to, like, draw more people in, because they're like, well, now I want to know, as opposed to, oh, I've seen Vapor Green and now I want to play the game. It's like, now I want to know what Steven's new story is that's just in a video game.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of the idea. You're pretty much right on with that whole idea there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we want to do a totally standalone thing, probably just a single player game where you play through a story that takes a couple hours, maybe something like that.
Okay.
With replayable boss battles and other fun little Easter eggs and stuff.
Yes.
That relate back to maybe Box Creek films, but just a touch, where it's not directly related.
Yeah, or like a Box Creep Films, video game where it's like all the characters are like, all these franchises coming together or something.
I thought about that too. Putting all the characters into like a fighting game or something could be pretty fun.
Have you incorporated any Box Creep stuff into your haunted houses?
Thank you for asking that. I'm glad that you did. Because we have so many monsters and gags and things.
Yeah.
In Battle Jacket, there is a few shots of like a big tentacle monster. And I just had this huge tentacle in my hands as I'm building the haunted house. And I was like, I should just put this over here. So
right on.
People got to walk around through a tunnel underneath the tentacle monster, so to speak. And I always have masks and monsters and things that I've made laying around. Some of the things have been in films, so we put them up. So yeah, there's a correlation there. We put all the movie props, not all of them, but some of them, into the haunted house.
Nice. So last time you were on, which was, I think, like a year and a half ago, end of 2023, you did tell us some really funny stories about running the haunted house, about people that crap their pants and stuff like that. Did you happen to come across anything like that in the past? I guess it would have just been last year's haunted house.
Yeah. It's amazing to me how I've done my haunted house for 17 or 18 years, I think, at this point. And it's crazy how much word of mouth has spread and this haunted house thing gets around. We've had people drive for an hour and a half just to come to my home haunt, and I go, I always ask people, where are you from? How did you get here? How did you find out about us? And they go, oh, my little cousin was here 3 years ago and we live 2 hours away and we came, and it's pretty amazing. So those stories honestly stick with me a lot. Or guys that I've seen as little kids, now fully grown, bringing their little kids. And
oh, wow.
it's pretty amazing and pretty heartwarming, because I like to think, when I was a kid and went through a haunted house, I was inspired at some point and went, well, I want to do something like this. And I go, with the thousands and thousands of people who've come through the haunt, I go, well, what is going to be my legacy? How many of these kids are going to grow up and do one of these next year or in a couple years or for their kids? So it's a really awesome, like, heartwarming experience. And those are the things that stick with me the most. But by that same token, watching people run out and tripping and freaking out and pissing their pants never gets old either. So every year we have a few of those. This year we had like a clown section inside of the haunt right in the middle. And we have these things hanging down from the ceiling and you have to push them all out of your way. And one of them, one person just flipped out and got tangled up in it and ripped it out and just ran out into the street. So they
oh my God.
out with him. And I'm like, how did you even do that? That was up there. Really.
Yeah. Wow. That makes me think, are you familiar at all with, I think it's called the McCamey Manor or McManey Manor?
Yeah, McCamey. Russ McCamey.
McCamey. Right. Would you ever do that?
I would never do that.
Yeah,
No,
it's fascinating to kind of, read about or watch or whatever, but yeah, I don't know
yeah.
how anyone could do that.
Russ McCamey is he's such a controversial member of the home haunting community. I kind of hate how everything is a community. Everything's a community. It's like he's a home haunter, I'm a home haunter. Everyone's like,
Right, right.
I mean, it's kind of silly, but
I don't know. That sounds so harsh though. You hate community.
no,
What
I
do you
don't
mean?
hate community, but everybody goes, "Do you like hot dogs? I like hot dogs. We should make a community of people who like hot dogs."
Oh,
I don't know. It feels kind of silly, but
okay.
Russ McCamey is kind of a controversial figure because some people think he's a sadist, some people think he's dishonest.
Yeah.
I don't really know. All I know is I would not want to do his haunt, and he'll tell you that straight up too. He goes, "You don't want to do this,"
Right.
But people get, with big egos and stuff, get fascinated and they get sucked right in. And then, of
Mm,
course, he tortures them for 10 hours long. And he tried to say, well, I warned you, and he did. So it's
yeah.
not something I would really do. My haunt is more of the traditional kind of boo haunts, you know,
Right.
um, where if you end up getting touched or something, it was on accident with an actor hit your shoulder or something. It's not like we're grabbing you and dunking you under water and simulating drowning and stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it makes me think like we're kind of going full circle in a way to how you see yourself in accordance with underground horror and how a lot of people are going in this direction of fetish gore and stuff like that. And as I was saying, it kind of makes me think of like Fear Factor, and in a way,
Mhm.
like Russ McCaney is sort of like a Fear Factor version of a haunted house, whereas you're very much like of the classic tradition of horror of just like you want to do the grand junial kind of spectacle, but you don't really want to actually traumatize anyone.
Um, you're right. You're right in the fact that the more traditional storytelling techniques and that anything, I don't have a problem shooting anything as long as it's fictitious,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to necessarily draw real blood. I don't want to be pissing on my friends. Like it just doesn't sound like a good time to me. Um,
Totally fair.
it just doesn't. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to clean that up. Like I don't know. It doesn't sound good. But by
Yeah.
that same token, too, if you look at the more traditionally created narratives in modern cinema that have had those kind of gut punch, jaw dropping things, are movies that people are still talking about, a la your August Undergrounds, your Inside, your Martyrs, your Serbian films. All of these kind of films were all fictitious, and they were all made using
Mm.
props and prosthetics and things, but they still have every bit as much gut punch as watching a mixtape or something would have.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. Because I feel like the mixtape, it feels a little too much like it's just a dare. Whereas,
Mhm.
something like August Underground, it doesn't just feel like strictly a dare, It does actually feel like it's trying to give you an original and genuine experience.
Yeah, yeah. I never could really get into the whole mixtape thing. I mean,
Mm.
it's a hard sell for me. I watch it and I go, well, that was horrible, and I don't know how else I'm supposed to feel.
I haven't really seen that many, to be honest. It's something that I've only really heard about over the past 2 or 3 years, maybe. I've watched a couple that the Quality Violent Cinema guys have made, and those are actually really fun. But they're kind of a mixed bag. They're more shocking than disturbing, if that makes sense. More just like, whoa, what was that? As opposed to, oh no, like I can't believe I just saw that. I wish I could erase that from my mind.
Sure.
But is there any mixtapes that you have enjoyed that you'd maybe recommend to someone like me that's still such a newbie?
I haven't really. I've seen if. What can I think of? I know Marcus Cook made a mixtape that I've heard good things about.
Oh,
The Marcus Cook.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
I've
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 heard
heard.
it. I've heard that too.
Yeah, I've heard that's pretty awesome. But I just am not that invested into, and I'm sure it's awesome and it's great, but it's just not really my style.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like I'm sure to the right person, the next episode of Power Rangers is really kick ass, but I just am not drawn into watching another episode of Power Rangers. You know what I mean? So for its respective market, it's probably awesome.
Wait. Are you throwing shade on Power Rangers on Split Your Head? What? No, I was joking. But I love old school Power Rangers, all the movies and everything.
I did when I was a kid, and I have a friend whose dad was an extra in Power Rangers, which is kind of cool.
Like, was he a putty or whatever?
He was one of the like little villain guys punching the Power Rangers and doing all that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like a putty.
Is that what they call it?
I think they're the henchmen.
I've never heard that term. Yeah.
I think it's a putty. The putty? I don't know.
I like that. I would be a putty 100%. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it can be fun. I kind of like the idea of like I want to see more people taking Power Rangers as a format and mixing it with something else. Like I heard about this film that's sort of like Power Rangers mixed with S&M or something, but it's supposed to be funny. And I'm like, okay, I have to see that. That sounds crazy.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
The Red Ranger actually got arrested for killing his roommate?
I did not. That's terrible.
The guy who originally played the Red Ranger, I had heard, got in an argument with his roommate and stabbed him through the stomach with a sword. I'm not even kidding. Apparently that really happened.
Okay. That's a movie idea right there. Like he's just so obsessed with Power Rangers, and then his roommate just like says something offensive like, you could never beat Lord Zed, you know, and then he just...
That's the straw that broke the camel's back, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I've had it with this guy. And he gets a sword. Yeah. It's so dark. We shouldn't be laughing about these things.
You have so many ideas. You should be writing movies, dude.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I will, but then I can't do the podcast anymore, so because I'll be making movies.
That is a shame. It's a good podcast.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We are coming up to, or past an hour, I should say. So I feel like we should wrap. Is there anything else that you wanted to like touch on or plug before we get into the questionnaire?
No, not particularly. Just thanks everybody for listening thus far. If you're not tired of my voice yet, stick around for these.
Or mine.
Who can get tired of Bob's voice, though? Let's be real.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. So I'm just going to say it. Okay. Stephen Grischuk. Questionnaire time. Are you ready?
Hit me with it, Bob.
All right. What is one item you can't live without?
One item I can't live without? I mean, in the filmmaking world, I guess we got to go with rubber chickens.
Oh.
So
okay.
I got to put, because I always squeeze a rubber chicken into everything. So if I didn't, people would be like, he's a fraud. This isn't him. This is not the guy. So,
yeah.
God. But in real life, a real thing that I can't, like an item? I mean, if I'm thinking of people, my beautiful wife, I can't live without her. But as far as like an item, oh man, I can think of food and stuff like an avocado. I love avocados, but oh man, an item I can't live without. Oh my God, I feel like this is question one, and I'm so unprepared. An item I can't live without. Gosh, I guess I would have to say like. I don't know. I really enjoy playing the bass. Maybe I'll just pick a bass for the sake of this question. Bass. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that totally works. All right. What was the last great movie you saw in theaters?
I think I've seen a lot of really kick-ass movies in theaters lately.
Nice.
I actually really enjoyed the movie Companion.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be this silly, the sex robot's killing everybody. And it is kind of that, but it really got me thinking about life and relationships and how people perceive each other and things. And it was an interesting movie. It was a little more, maybe I looked into it way too much, but I thought it was a little more deeper than what I thought it was going in for. So I liked Companion quite a bit.
Cool. Kind of like Battle Jacket.
That's a huge compliment.
Right?
Thank you. Yeah.
You know, there's the depth. But people might think it's just like a fun splatter film, but there's, mature themes to it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad
Yeah.
somebody.
Okay. Next question. What was the last great concert you went to?
The last great concert I went to, I've seen a lot of really good concerts lately too.
Nice.
I've got some friends who play in like a Black Sabbath cover band.
Mm.
And we saw them recently, and they just bring the house down every single time. The audience here in Oceanside just loves them, so the place just goes bananas. Like, so that was a really great show. Also, I got to see Gutalox for the first time. I don't know if you're familiar with Gutalox.
Gutalox, yeah, they're like a death metal band, right?
Yeah, from the Czech Republic.
Okay.
Yeah, and they made a tour out to the U.S., and I was like, I got one shot. I might be able to see them. So I drove a couple hours north, and I saw them, and it was amazing. So
cool.
Really enjoyed
That's
that
awesome.
show, too.
Sweet. Gutalox, and sorry, what was your friend's band called?
They're a Black Sabbath tribute band. They call themselves Sabbath Buddy Sabbath.
Sabbath Buddy Sabbath.
Yeah, the guitar player's name is Buddy, so...
Oh, okay, cool. I like
Sabbath
that.
Buddy Sabbath. They're really, really exceptional. They're really quite good.
Nice. Okay. What was the last great book you read?
Can't read.
You can't read.
I always tell people I can't read, but I really don't read a lot of books, honestly.
Okay.
I skim through books for inspiration or things. Like I have this monster book right over there, and it's all about horror movie artwork and stuff like that. So I guess it's probably that one. But as far as really digging into a book, I haven't done it since high school, since I had to.
Okay. Well, I find that sometimes with reading, at least for me, it kind of goes in like ebbs and flows in a way where it's like I'll maybe not read for a few years, and then I'll just be like ravenous and read like a book a week or something. So
yeah, I enjoyed reading when I would read. Like I could read really fast. I read at a decent level. And I always feel like when you tell people like, oh, I don't really read, they always just think of you as like a dumb knuckle dragger, but
yeah.
But I really, if I'm being honest, I really don't read. I watch a movie or two a week maybe. And other than that, I'm writing and making things.
Totally fair. You are so busy. That makes sense. Okay. The next one is a bit of a doozy, so hear me out. For his final meal, John Wayne Gacy picked KFC chicken, shrimp, and strawberries. For your final meal before being executed, what would you pick?
That's so good. I love that. This is such a fun question. I ask people this all the time, honestly.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
For me, personally, I wouldn't probably pick any desserts. I wouldn't have any desserts at all. I'm not a sweets guy. No pie, no cake, no ice cream.
Okay.
So I would probably just have a couple servings of a lot of good stuff. Like savory, kind of sink your teeth into it. Like I really love a good meatloaf. A meatloaf is really good. A burrito. I really love a good burrito. Pulled pork. Got to have a little bit of pulled pork.
Okay.
Maybe some mac and cheese. And
nice.
Maybe a fish taco or two.
Ooh, okay.
A cheeseburger. Gotta have a cheeseburger too, though. I can eat a cheeseburger probably every week.
Okay.
So it's really hard to say.
Yeah.
Maybe a cheeseburger with like a meatloaf patty and a tortilla or something like that. Just put it all together.
I think it is your last meal, so don't even think about the repercussions of eating all that, the indigestion, the vomiting, whatever. Just you are able to eat as much as you want. Take a bite of all of that, and then, kiss the world goodbye.
Yeah, it's got to be spicy. So you got to cover everything in peppers and hot sauce. Maybe a spicy curry, or maybe throw a spicy curry in there.
Wow. Okay. Huh. So Susanna Kapostasi, for her answer, said that she would do this thing called nachos giving, which is basically a plate of nachos where you put everything that you make for Thanksgiving onto the nachos. So like turkey, stuffing, mac and cheese, like all that on top of your nachos with like nacho cheese on top of it.
Excellent choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I pretty much
Yeah,
do that
you
after
just made me think of that.
Thanksgiving, but I never heard of it called that before. That's a good idea.
Oh, you do that?
Honestly, yeah. Like if I open up the fridge and we've got a little bit of this and a little bit of that, I'm like, let's just put it over chips and cover it in cheese.
Really? You
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Man, we got like half a chicken left. We got some chopped onions. I'm like, put those together on chips and cheese, and all of a sudden you got chicken nachos, So yeah.
Damn. I've never even thought of doing that. That's so
Mhm.
crazy. I'll have to
Yeah.
try it. But I feel like I wouldn't be able to do that as a leftover, just, oh, what do I have left over? I'll throw it on. I feel like I'd have to plan that. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know. I'm kind of spontaneous in the kitchen, I suppose. I open up the fridge and I'm
Okay.
like, I got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'll make it work.
Right. Yeah.
I actually really enjoy cooking. I really, really enjoy cooking.
Hmm.
Cleaning up the kitchen, maybe not so much, but
Ah,
making a meal that somebody else loves. And I always look at it like a challenge. I approach everything in my life like a challenge. Like, can I outdo myself or this person or whatever? And I
hmm.
look at cooking kind of like that too. I'm like, so what's the best thing you ever ate? And I was like, I'm going to try to top that. And so I
Yeah.
always attack the kitchen like it's like a blank canvas, and I'm always trying to create a masterpiece in there.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because you are an artist, you are very productive, and you approach food in the same way.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just uh my frustration with the world. I'm like, this could be better. Watch me outdo it, or whatever it is.
Ah, okay.
I look at
Wait,
everything like it's a competition. I try to outdo everything.
I feel like I asked you this last time you were on, but are you a Capricorn?
No, no, I'm a Taurus.
Oh, okay. I think Tauruses might be like that as well.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you, but I am pretty determined, pretty stubborn, and competitive.
Well, it's working for you so far.
Thanks, man. It's been fun,
Yeah.
and at the same time too, I understand I'm not making Hollywood films either.
Yeah,
I, I
yeah.
I know where I fall in the pecking order of things, but
Right, right.
it's my like filmmaking and stuff never came like supernaturally. You know what I mean? It's not like I just woke up and went boom. I turned on a camera and all of a sudden I can frame a shot and make this effect look
Hmm.
good. But my drive and determination to outdo that, I think, try to push past what I'm supposed to be capable of is what keeps me wanting to do better.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. And with everything that you've learned, I feel like this is my way of segueing into the last question.
Sorry, I went completely
You might.
off the rails.
Oh, no, 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 no! I love it. I love it. Okay,
I mean,
because the last
cheeseburger.
question, cheeseburgers. Oh, no, no, no! You answered the previous one perfectly. The final question is just: can art go too far?
Yeah, I think so because you can disguise anything as art. People can
Mm,
use art as like a cover for something else. Um, but at the same time, I'm also very much against like censorship and people not being able to say what they want. Um,
yeah.
I think it's wrong, but I think if you want to spread like Nazi propaganda or something, you should be allowed to. Because
Mm.
when you do that, it kind of it opens you up for criticism. And if
Ah,
you
okay.
if you repress that stuff, even people who have bad takes, you know, it's like it kind of there is a subculture that will be attracted to that.
Yeah.
It's the whole premise why in death metal albums and stuff it says parental advisory. It draws that. What do you mean I'm not supposed to see this? Why am I not supposed to? And then you come to it and you
Right.
go, oh, this is kind of awesome. So um, I think you should pretty much be able to film anything, or in a song, you should be able to discuss kind of anything like that. It should be open. But as far as taking things too far, I think yeah, you can take things too far. Um,
Mm.
I think Daniel from Mike Gardenia cutting off his finger was taking things too far. I think he's permanently maimed. And that's kind of from my perspective, it's hard to stand by.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe his perspective is a little different, and who's to say which is more valid? I suppose. But um, for me personally, my art, I would never like self harm or encourage somebody to hurt themselves or something like that, just so I can get a semi-interesting shot that people talk about for a month,
Yeah.
So I think art can be pushed way too far, but I don't think I've seen a lot of cases where it has been.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody were to commit a genocide or something and go, "This is my masterpiece," I would go, "Well, it's probably kind of too far." But,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I think like from an authentic standpoint, like if you really are an artist, I don't think you'll probably push it too far. But I think people can use art to kind of mask what they're doing and stand behind it as a piece of art, and then maybe that would be too far. That maybe was kind of diluted, but I hope that made some sense.
No, for sure. You're kind of touching a lot of things that people have been answering so far. So I had Louise Ward on, who I believe she said, as long as you have intention to what you're doing, then you can't go too far, which I feel like you're kind of saying as well. It's like, if you do something just for the sake of shock, then it's not really genuine, But and what you're saying too about like people having the freedom to say whatever they want, I think I agree. There really should just be that sort of, how do I put this? Like that awareness that like freedom of speech isn't freedom of repercussions, or does that? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So
100%.
if someone does say like spread Nazi propaganda, it's for them to do so to realize that the world will then react how they are going to react. So if people are freely able to do that, then the world will freely be able to react to that.
Totally.
Or something. Yeah.
That's like a guy going into a gay bar or something and being like, bunch of queers, and then like everyone beats him up. Like, of course it's going to happen,
Right, yeah.
It's like, well, should he be allowed to say that? Like, well, maybe, but maybe should he? Well, maybe not, but he'll find that out the hard way. You know what I mean?
Right, true.
So,
yeah.
So I guess that's kind of how I see it.
I see what you're saying.
Very much, I very much agree with you, I think.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, we finished the questionnaire. So I think we've plugged everything in terms of how we've talked about Battle Jacket. The video games are still available. Scream Time you can still watch on YouTube, and you can also pick up a copy of Scream Time, right? Season 1.
Actually, yes, yeah. Battle Jacket is out on DVD.
Okay.
There's the Battle Jacket DVDs.
Nice.
And we also have Scream Time. Scream Time is available on Future Productions website. But it's got a bunch of cool bonus content John and I shot in there. And honestly,
Nice.
The bonus content for Battle Jacket, I think, is a total blast. I think there's like a little making of on the DVD. There's a behind the scenes interview where we talked to Ian about his whole thing with his bandmate who passed away and stuff like that. So I think the bonus content really adds a lot to the viewing experience.
Nice. Okay. And then is there any projects coming up that you want to hint at, or?
Nothing I want to hint at. A couple things I'm writing, and a couple storyboards have been started, but we'll have to see. Maybe I'll get started on them at some point this year, but I don't suspect anything will be out this year.
Okay. And one last question, because last time you were on, this was happening. Is there any Box Creep sales happening on the website?
So Battle Jacket is listed at regular price, but everything else has been marked down. So if anybody was interested in a t-shirt or a sculpture or a video game or another movie, those have all been marked down. So those will be there for a little while. And I'm thinking probably in October of having a Halloween sale where everything is marked significantly down.
Okay, perfect. Well, this will be coming out way before then. But either way, you post about it on social media, I'll share it and all that good stuff.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Bob.
Well, thank you, Stephen. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to the 45 things that come out from you by the next time you come on, which you definitely will be coming back because I always love talking to you. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate it. Split Your Head's kick-ass show, and I look forward to talking to you as well. So I'll gladly come on again.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much, and have a good night.
Thanks. Hail the rubber chicken, everybody.
Hail the rubber chicken.